What's up, guys? I'm here with my friend Dr. Stephanie Irwin with Rise Performance and Health, and welcome back to our series on sleep, where we talk about the importance of sleep and the factors that you can take to help you sleep better. I think a very underrated aspect of health and just like working out is sleep. I feel like a lot of people neglect seeing if they're actually really sleeping well, especially if you like start working out more intensely, right? Like overtraining is something that's very common in like gym culture. Like people just go balls to the wall way too hard, and so their muscles need rest, but they're not getting adequate hours of sleep, or they're not even hitting deep REM. And I think something that I always like preach to my clients and to my friends is that sleep is actually one of the most important things that you can do. Try to do everything to optimize your sleep, because sleep does, it's linked, very highly correlated with recovery, athleticism, strength, and healing. So I wanted to ask, like, what are your thoughts on sleep? What is your perspective on sleep and how it's correlated to your mental health, your emotional health, and your physical health?
Yeah, sleep is definitely a topic that I am passionate about, mostly because we don't think about it. We don't integrate it, and we might be aware, like, oh, I need to sleep better. But what does that even mean? So why is sleep important? I think we all know it's important, but there's so many things that happen when we sleep. So let's talk about the physical component that we feel in our body, right? If we're going about our day normally, or especially like if we're an athlete, or our workouts are very specific and we're doing higher level function, lifting, etc., and we're putting a lot of demands on our body. When we sleep, when we reach deep sleep, there's different phases of sleep, right? We have our light sleep, we have our deep sleep, and we have REM. And we should be going through at least a couple cycles of all of those. The REM and deep sleep are shorter cycles, and we don't need 6 hours of those, but we have to have enough sleep to get to those cycles. And why is that important? Deep sleep is where our body restores. During that time, our core temperature drops even more, and we're able to start restoring and flushing out inflammation in our body. Now, I say that our body is constantly experiencing inflammation. I don't mean like we have an injury. We're a living being. So our cells are constantly dying, and then we're making new cells. That happens via small inflammatory processes. So inflammation isn't bad, it's a part of healing and just living, period. So we have a normal amount of just inflammation, helping us live and helping us stay new. And the byproduct of that needs to be flushed out. And a lot of that happens during deep sleep. So our overall inflammatory baseline in our body, in our tissues, will go down when we get the appropriate amount of deep sleep, right? And if we can optimize that, getting a couple hours of deep sleep is beautiful, is prime, right? That's where that really happens, where we're able to flush that out and we'll feel different, right? So if we're talking about lifting, right, and performance-based, if we're not getting enough deep sleep in our sleep cycle, then we're gonna have a higher baseline of inflammation. We'll probably have more soreness for longer, right? And then we're not going to function, the tissue part, like our tissues actually won't function as properly, right? Not as efficiently. So that's just the physical component. And then we have all the layers of our mental health, right? And our spiritual health. So from a mental perspective, right, if we're not getting an appropriate amount of sleep, which then we have the processes during deep sleep and REM, specifically REM, where our brain gets restored, right? We have all these processes in our brain, and we need the things that we're learning, the things that we're experiencing, our memory, all those things start getting processed, and then our short-term memory also, a lot of it gets transitioned to long-term memory during sleep, right? During those 2 cycles of sleep. Then that is what primes our brain, right, to be restored to the next day. If our brain isn't functioning to its full capacity, we can't also be alert enough to send the right signals to our body to be efficient in movement, right? So then we risk injury because we're not alert enough and our brain hasn't been restored enough, right, to then move well and to move safely. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
I mean, focus on sleep. Or just go to sleep.
Just go to sleep.
And that's where sleep hygiene comes in.
Sleep hygiene? What the frick is sleep hygiene, bro? What is that? Is that like you shower, like your pre-sleep like ritual?
Right, yeah.
Actually that's a science?
It is. Yeah, it actually is. It is.
Sleep hygiene.
It's a thing. It is a thing. And it's a really important thing. So our bodies respond to structure, right? Our bodies respond to routine. We need a routine.
Okay, hold on. We need to get into the...
It's a thing.
No way, dude. That's not...
Well.
Alright, well, I guess sleep hygiene's a thing. What is it? And why is it important?
Yes, let's understand it. Sleep hygiene came about as we're understanding more of sleep and understanding the importance of deep sleep and REM and how it restores our body, and that so many people have terrible sleep quality. Sleep hygiene is about maximizing our sleep quality. Because let's say you go to bed and you are in bed and maybe you seem like you're asleep for like 8 hours or 10 hours. 10 hours is a lot. But you wake up and you don't feel rested and you're like, I don't know why. Your quality of sleep is the most important, not the duration. Because if we get good quality sleep, that means we're getting enough REM and deep sleep. So there's been a lot of research of like, sleep is hard, right? Like there are a lot of people that struggle with sleep. Our world, our society does not help. We're constantly stimulated. We are constantly told to do more, work more, and by the way, let's be social and live and be like, stay up late and have all these like crazy unstructured lives. And so sleep hygiene came about with studies of how can we change it in our day and how.
Okay.
Right, so the things that trickle out, right, to sleep hygiene is hygiene, right, is number one, light stimulation, right? The sun rises and the sun sets, and humans play with that, right? Ever since the invention of the light bulb, and we're like, no, we can stay up longer and we can work longer.
Yeah.
Right, that affects our body. It stimulates our photoreceptors in the back of our retina, and it says, ooh, stay awake, because the sun is supposed to keep us awake. So now that we work our lives in a digital age, we're learning more about how the light from screens affects our photoreceptors in our eyes.
Right.
So screen time, and specifically before we go to bed, specifically now, we know there's a difference in blue light, which is from screens, the main light that comes from screens. Blue light stimulates our photoreceptors to stay awake. And so it tells our brain, hey, you need to be awake. So we're watching TV, we're on our laptops, we're on our phones, and we're doing that especially the couple hours before bed. What that does is it does not allow as easily our brain to enter sleep. Or even if we get to sleep, because of the recency, it can tell where our brain is constantly fighting the stimulation it recently had to be like, wait, we're supposed to be awake. We're supposed to be awake, right? So if you're waking up a lot in the night, right, that could be a factor that all of our screen time is affecting us. Now, great thing is, there's a lot of awesome technology. Most people know about this now. Most devices, not TVs so much, unfortunately, but most devices have blue light filters. So we take away the blue light and that stimulation goes down.
Right.
The blue light is what stimulates us the most. So blue light filters helps immensely. I know on all my devices, I just set it where as soon as the sun starts to set, my devices filter out that blue light. It makes it that kind of orangey hue, right?
Yeah.
So that's really helpful. Like, okay, we can start to at least eliminate that part or try to, right? I mean, these lights are fluorescent and not helpful.
Yeah.
But the screen time seems to be a big factor. We look at research of how people are able to fall asleep and that stimulation to waking up that we get in like a couple hours after you fall asleep. So screen time, number one. Number two, something else that's shaking out in the research, right, is our routine, like the hygiene, right? If we develop a routine, let's say your routine is to, I'm gonna like do the dishes and brush my teeth, put on my pajamas, and then I'm going to read. And then I go to bed. If you do it, especially in that order, our brains are really good at association. So our brains are saying, it starts to recognize, oh, it's time for sleep. I need to change my melatonin levels because I'm about to go to sleep. So we're preparing our brain and our body to enter a phase of sleep. And so we get a better balance of our neurotransmitters and our hormones to allow us to enter sleep because our brain starts to recognize it. It doesn't have to be a long routine. Right. It can be, but it can be something really short or even just one thing that is very consistent. Like, this is what I do before I go to bed, and your brain's like, oh, okay. Now it still needs a little bit of time, but it's that consistency where our brain associates this with time for sleep. And so then it can enter that phase. So we've got our screen time, right? We've got routines, temperature. So during deep sleep, that core temperature has to drop. So if we are in a warmer room, when we sleep, it's harder for our core temperature to drop. So keeping our environment cool as best as we can tolerate is ideal because it helps us reach and stay in deep sleep during those phases that we get to deep sleep. Next, another thing that shakes out in the research is exercise. Exercise during the day. Right? So when we work out, when we get our heart rate up, whatever that is, whatever kind of activity, cardio works really well, that helps our body create a great balance of what we need from like a heart perspective and as well as our neurotransmitters and hormones to provide better sleep. We don't understand all the nuances of that exactly, but we do know it's really significant in helping people improve their quality sleep. It's a pretty big factor. So if you're exercising during the day, we know that those people get better quality sleep. And when I say quality, I'm talking about getting all those phases and waking up less in the night. Well, along with that, if we exercise right before bed, so specifically like intense workout.
Right.
So we do an intense workout right before bed, like within the last couple hours, that can keep us awake,
right.
As you might imagine, right? That's like very stimulating. So we've got exercise, food. So same thing, similarly to exercise, if we eat a large meal, our body has to work to digest it, right? And
so
it's also going to
stimulate,
awake. So it can keep us awake, right before bed. Now, if we're, obviously we can eat in the evening, but it's really more that larger meal right before bed, okay? And then another huge thing, I mentioned how our brain creates really deep associations. We need to keep whatever space that we're sleeping for sleeping and nothing else. Because our brain will make an association that a lot of people do things in their bed, right? Yeah. Our brain will associate whatever that activity is with the bed. So if we're on our phones, or sometimes like a lot of people like to read in bed, even that is not really recommended. You should read in a chair outside your bed, or even like just not in the bedroom or on your bed, if you're struggling with sleep or that sleep quality. If you're going to do work in bed, or even like, I don't know, puzzle, I don't know if people do crosswords.
What's a crossword?
Right? Like maybe on their phone or something like that, right? But especially a lot of people do things on their phones, right? And in bed. Our brain associates activity and wakefulness with being in bed. So maybe you fall asleep to that. But similarly to what I talked about screen time, our brain is still fighting this urge to wake up because we just did something that is supposed to keep us stimulated in our place of sleep. So that can contribute to to us waking up rather than staying asleep and getting good quality sleep. So we really want to reserve the bed and the bedroom for just sleep.
Cool.
Yeah, that's sleep hygiene.
Nice.